I'm Stacy Ellis, 28, and my family has always treated me like a shadow. My brother, the golden child, a successful lawyer, could do no wrong. And me? I poured my heart into holding the family together, sacrificing my own dreams, always trying to make them proud. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. They smiled at my brother, patted his back with pride, while I received only cold stares and sharper words. "Why can't you be more like him?" they said, their voices cutting through me like knives. I swallowed it all and stayed silent, believing that one day they'd finally notice me. Then my brother's wedding approached. I was tasked with making everything perfect, every detail, every arrangement, ensuring nothing went wrong. I thought maybe this time they would see me. I was wrong. The night before the wedding, we sat around the dinner table. My brother demanded more lavish bands, imported flowers, things I simply couldn't provide. I said no. That's when my parents snapped. Their words hit me like a punch I never saw coming. The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever. The room fell silent. My chest tightened, but I didn't beg. I stood, grabbed my keys, and walked out. The door closed behind me like a final period at the end of a sentence. The wedding day came. Everything seemed perfect until it all fell apart in the blink of an eye. If it were you, would you stay to witness it or walk away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your answer. Years earlier, I was a freelance marketer with big dreams. I just landed a $40,000 contract to revamp a regional ad campaign for a major supermarket chain. It was my ticket to independence, my chance to make a name in a competitive industry. But then my family's grocery store in Erie, Pennsylvania, hit rock bottom. Bills piled up, suppliers stopped calling, and my parents were drowning in debt. My mom's voice cracked over the phone, begging for help. My dad, usually stoic, admitted they might lose everything. I couldn't let that happen. So I walked away from the contract. I called the supermarket rep, canceled the deal, and poured every ounce of energy into saving our store. I crafted a marketing campaign from scratch, ads on local radio, flyers in every mailbox, even early social media posts on clunky platforms. I negotiated with vendors, charmed customers, and cut costs. Within months, foot traffic doubled, revenue climbed, and we paid off the worst debts. I worked nights tweaking slogans, designing posters, believing this would finally make them see me. But they didn't. One evening, my mom, Joyce Reed, and my dad, Jeffrey Reed, called a family meeting. I expected gratitude, maybe a nod for pulling us through. Instead, they handed the store's reins to my brother, Brent Ellis. He's a lawyer, my mom said, her eyes glowing with pride. He's got the head for this. Brent, who hadn't lifted a finger during those months at his law firm, was now in charge. My dad nodded, avoiding my gaze. "It's for the best," he said. I stood there, stunned, chest tight. Brent smirked, adjusting his tie, already planning changes to my campaign. "You did okay, Stacy," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. I had saved their legacy. I had sacrificed my future. But to them, I was just the backup, the one who filled in gaps. My mom praised Brent's vision as if my work had never existed. My dad didn't even look up from his coffee. I wanted to scream, to demand acknowledgement, but I didn't. I swallowed the hurt, forced a smile, and kept going. Late nights at the store, I reorganized shelves, updated ads, did whatever it took to stay useful. I told myself they'd notice eventually. Maybe at a family dinner, my mom would finally say, "You saved us." Maybe my dad would pat my shoulder instead of Brent's. Nathan Todd, my best friend since college, saw through it. We'd meet at a diner, and he'd shake his head over my stories. "They're blind, Stacy," he said one night, sipping coffee. "You're killing yourself for people who don't care." I brushed it off, but his words lingered. I couldn't stop hoping, couldn't quit, trying to earn their respect. So I stayed, pouring myself into their world, believing one day they'd value me. The store thrived because of my campaign. Customers filled the aisles. Cash registers hummed, and suppliers returned. But every time I walked in, I saw Brent's name on the manager's office door. My parents called him to discuss strategy, while I restocked shelves. "Good job," my mom said once, distracted, as if I'd just mopped a floor, not saved their business. Brent would breeze in, tossing out ideas I'd already implemented, and they'd nod as if he'd invented them. I kept waiting for a real thank you, thinking maybe next time. Maybe if I did more, they'd see me as more than the lesser child. So I pushed forward, ignoring the ache in my chest, hoping the day would come when they'd finally say I was enough. Months later, I found myself knee-deep in planning my brother's wedding. Brent was set to marry Lindsay Newman, his fiancée, and my parents handed me the reins to make it happen. They didn't ask if I had the time or the money. They just expected me to deliver. I'd been freelancing as a marketer, scraping by, but I dipped into my savings $10,000 to cover deposits for vendors, the venue, everything. I wanted it to be perfect, not for Brent, but to prove I could accomplish something they'd actually value. I spent weeks calling caterers, florists, and photographers, locking in every detail. I picked the menu: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, summer salads, carefully balancing quality with budget. I met with vendors in Erie, haggled to keep costs down, double-checked contracts to avoid mistakes. But Brent had other ideas. He didn't just want a wedding. He wanted a spectacle. "Get a string quartet from Pittsburgh," he demanded one morning over breakfast, scrolling through his phone. "And those rare orchids from overseas." Lindsay had seen them in a magazine. I explained the budget was tight, that my savings were already stretched. He rolled his eyes. "You're always cutting corners, Stacy. Make it happen." My mom, Joyce, chimed in, sipping her coffee. "He's right. This is his day. Don't mess it up." My dad, Jeffrey, just nodded, flipping through his newspaper. Their words stung, but I pressed on, thinking maybe a flawless wedding would finally earn their respect. I worked late nights emailing vendors, adjusting plans. I found a local band willing to play for less and booked standard roses instead of imported flowers. Every choice was calculated to balance Brent's extravagant demands with reality. But he kept pushing. One afternoon, he called, insisting on a celebrity DJ from Cleveland. "It's only a few thousand more," he said, as if it were nothing. I reminded him I was funding half the wedding myself. "Figure it out," he snapped, hanging up. Joyce overheard and shook her head. "Why can't you just do what he wants?" she said. Jeffrey glanced up, muttering, "Don't ruin this for him." I felt invisible. I'd spent hours coordinating, sacrificing my own projects to make their vision work. Yet every step I took was criticized. At a family lunch, Joyce pointed out a typo in the invitation draft I'd shown her. "Careless," she said, tossing it aside. Brent smirked. Typical Stacy. I wanted to snap back, to tell them how much I'd been carrying, but I bit my tongue. I kept tweaking the seating chart, confirming deliveries, hoping they'd see the effort behind it. Nathan noticed the toll it was taking. We met at a coffee shop in Erie one evening, and I vented about Brent's endless demands. "He wants a custom ice sculpture now," I said, exhausted. Nathan leaned forward, his voice firm. "Stacy, you're bending over backward for people who don't appreciate you. Stand up for yourself." I shrugged, stirring my coffee. "If I pull this off, maybe they'll finally see me." He shook his head, unconvinced. "They won't. You're worth more than their approval." But I couldn't stop. I kept at it, calling the venue daily, checking linens, confirming the cake, even paying an extra deposit to secure a backup generator, just in case. My savings dwindled, but I told myself it was worth it. If I could deliver Brent's perfect day, maybe Joyce would smile at me for once. Maybe Jeffrey would say something other than, "Don't ruin it." I poured everything into the wedding, believing it was my chance to shine. Brent's demands kept escalating. At one point, he texted a link to a luxury catering service, insisting on caviar appetizers. I called him, explaining it would blow the budget. "You're embarrassing me," he said, his voice cold. Joyce overheard and sighed. "Just do what he asks, Stacy. It's not that hard." Jeffrey nodded, eyes glued to the TV. Their dismissal burned, but I kept working, adjusting plans, hoping the wedding would finally change how they saw me. The night before the wedding, I sat at our family dining table in Erie. The air was thick with tension. My mom had cooked her usual roast, But no one was eating. Brent leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone, while Lindsay picked at her plate. My dad sipped his wine, barely glancing up. I had spent months planning Brent's wedding, pouring $10,000 of my savings into it. But tonight felt different, like a storm was coming. I braced myself, hoping for a quiet evening. Then Brent broke the silence. "Stacy, we need to upgrade the menu," he said without looking up. "Add lobster tails and that vintage champagne from Napa Valley. Oh, and hire that photographer from Pittsburgh, the one who shot the governor's gala." I froze. Lobster tails, $500, a bottle champagne, a photographer charging $3,000 a day. I'd already stretched my savings to the limit. "Brent, I can't," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I've already paid for everything, the venue, the band, the flowers."
"There's no money left,"
he scoffed, tossing his phone on the table. "You're always so cheap, Stacy. This is my wedding. Make it happen." Joyce set her glass down hard, eyes narrowing.
"He's right," she said.
"This is a once-in-a-lifetime day. Why are you being so selfish?" Jeffrey looked up, his voice gruff. "Don't ruin this for your brother." My chest tightened. Their words cut deeper than I expected. I'd given everything, my time, my money, my energy, and they still saw me as the problem. I've spent $10,000 of my own savings. The budget's maxed out. Lobster and a celebrity photographer aren't possible, I tried to explain. Brent rolled his eyes, leaning toward Lindsay.
"See?
I told you she'd skimp on us." Lindsay stayed silent, avoiding my gaze. Joyce folded her arms, her voice sharp. "You've always been like this, Stacy. Never stepping up when it matters." Jeffrey nodded. "Brent deserves better than your half-hearted effort." Half-hearted? I'd worked nights, haggled with vendors, and made their dream wedding possible. But to them, it was nothing. I pushed back, my voice rising. "I've paid for half this wedding. I've done everything you asked. I can't keep pouring money I don't have into this." Brent smirked, shaking his head. "Then maybe you shouldn't be involved at all." Joyce leaned forward, ice cold. "You know what, Stacy? The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever." The room went silent. Jeffrey didn't flinch, just stared at his plate. Lindsay shifted uncomfortably, saying nothing. My heart pounded, their words echoing like a slap. Vanish. After all I'd done. I wanted to scream, to list every sacrifice I'd made, but their faces, Joyce's glare, Jeffrey's indifference, Brent's smug grin, told me it wouldn't matter. They'd chosen him again. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. "Fine," I said, my voice low but firm. "If that's what you want." I grabbed my purse, keys jingling in my hand. Joyce called after me. "Don't make a scene, Stacy." But I was done listening. I walked out, slamming the door behind me. The sound was sharp and final. Outside, the cold, eerie air hit my face, but a fire burned inside. I'd given them everything, my savings, my time, my hope, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Sitting in my car, I gripped the steering wheel, mind racing. They wanted me gone. Fine. But I wasn't going to fade quietly. I'd spent months building their perfect day only to be told I was the problem. No more. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but one thing was clear. I was done being their doormat. I started the engine. Tomorrow, they'd see what happened when I stopped carrying their weight. The next morning, I woke with their words still burning in my ears. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, the savings app open. $10,000, my entire nest egg, was tied up in deposits for Brent's wedding. The caterers, florists, the band, all paid from my pocket to make their day perfect. But after last night's dinner, their demand for me to vanish forever changed everything. I wasn't going to let them walk over me anymore. I started calling vendors. First, the caterer. "Cancel the order," I said, my voice steady. "I'm pulling the deposit." The woman hesitated, asking about penalties, but I didn't care. Next, the florist. "No roses, no centerpieces. Refund my payment." The band was last. They had cashed my check, but I demanded a chargeback. By noon, I'd clawed back most of my $10,000, leaving the wedding stripped bare. No flowers, no music, no food. I felt no guilt, only resolve. They wanted me gone. I'd give them a wedding they'd never forget. By afternoon, chaos erupted at the venue. Guests arrived to empty tables. No band playing, no bouquets in sight. Lindsay, Brent's fiancée, stood in her gown, stunned as relatives whispered in confusion. Brent, red-faced, yelled at the venue staff, who had no answers. Joyce called me, her voice shrill through voicemail. "Stacy, what have you done? You've ruined everything." Jeffrey left a message too, cold and clipped. "You're a disgrace to this family." I didn't call back. Their accusations didn't faze me. I'd heard enough. That evening, Brent took to an online forum, a local Erie message board buzzing with gossip. "My sister sabotaged my wedding," he posted, his words dripping with venom. "She's jealous, spiteful, and ruined the best day of my life." Comments piled up, some from neighbors I'd known for years, calling me selfish, unhinged. Joyce chimed in, replying to Brent's post. "She's always been trouble." Jeffrey didn't post, but I knew he agreed. Their lies spread like wildfire, twisting the truth to save face. I sat in my apartment, reading the posts, stomach churning. Part of me wanted to fire back, expose how I'd funded half their dream wedding, how they demanded more than I could give. But what was the point? They'd never admit they were wrong. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments in Asheville, North Carolina. I'd visited once and loved the quiet mountains, the fresh start it promised. Erie held nothing for me anymore, just a family that saw me as disposable. I made a call to a realtor, asking about rentals. "Something small," I said. "I'm starting over." That night, Nathan stopped by, his face grim. "They're trashing you online," he said, showing me Brent's post on his phone. "You okay?" I nodded, though my hands shook. "I'm done with them," I told him. He didn't push, just sat with me as I packed a few boxes, books, my laptop, small belongings. "You're stronger than they know," he said before leaving. His words stayed with me, a small anchor in the storm. By midnight, I'd booked a one-way bus ticket to Asheville for the following week. The wedding's collapse was on them. They'd pushed me too far. Joyce's voicemail played again in my mind, her voice blaming me for their embarrassment. Jeffrey's cold tone echoed, labeling me a disgrace. Brent's post, with its lies, stung worst of all. But I wasn't staying to fight their narrative. I'd given them everything, my money, my effort, my hope, and they'd thrown it away. Now, I was choosing myself. Weeks later, I stood in my small, Erie office, packing the last of my things. I'd built a modest freelance marketing business over the years, a side hustle that brought in just enough to keep me afloat. It wasn't much, a rented room with a desk, a computer, and a few client files. But it was mine. I decided to sell it. A local agency offered $25,000 for my client list and contracts. I signed the papers without hesitation, pen steady in hand. That money, plus the $10,000 I'd pulled back from the wedding, was my ticket out. I also made a harder call. For years, I'd poured myself into the family grocery store, first with a marketing campaign that saved it, then with a $5,000 investment from my savings to keep it running. I'd managed inventory, negotiated with suppliers, kept the books balanced. But after their betrayal, I was done. I contacted the bank and withdrew every cent. I didn't call Joyce or Jeffrey to warn them. They'd made their choice when they told me to vanish. Without my money and management, the store's cracks, ones I'd patched for years, split wide open. By the end of the month, I was on a bus to Asheville, North Carolina. My belongings fit in 2 suitcases, clothes, a laptop, a few books. The mountains loomed outside the window, their quiet promise pulling me forward. I'd rented a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with a view of the Blue Ridge Peaks. The first night, I sat on the bare floor eating takeout, feeling lighter than I had in years. Erie was behind me. Joyce, Jeffrey, Brent, and their venom gone. The family store didn't last long after I left. Nathan texted me updates, blunt and unflinching. Suppliers stopped delivering when payment stalled. Customers dwindled, turned off by empty shelves. Brent handed the reins, fumbled every decision. Joyce tried to step in but couldn't handle the logistics I'd managed. Jeffrey retreated, blaming everyone else. Within weeks, the store declared bankruptcy, its doors locked for good. Nathan wrote, "They're falling apart without you." I didn't reply. Their failure wasn't my burden anymore. In Asheville, I started over. Freelance marketing jobs trickled in, small gigs for local shops, crafting ads for coffee roasters and boutiques. The work was steady, my skills sharp from years of hustling. I kept to myself at first, wary of new faces, but the city's warmth pulled me in. One morning, I wandered into a bakery downtown, drawn by the smell of fresh bread. Shirley Bennett, the owner, greeted me with a wide smile. She was in her 50s, apron dusted with flour, laugh loud enough to fill the room. "You look new around here," she said, sliding a free scone across the counter. We started talking. I told her I'd just moved, leaving out the messy details. Shirley didn't pry. She shared stories of her own, how she'd started the bakery after a divorce, rebuilding from scratch. "Takes guts to start over," she said, eyes kind. She invited me to a local business meetup, introducing me to shop owners who needed marketing help. I landed 2 clients that week thanks to her. Shirley became a steady part of my day, coffee at her bakery, chats about life. Her presence grounded me. I didn't hear from Joyce or Jeffrey. Brent sent one angry email accusing me of tanking the family business. "You're selfish," he wrote, as if I hadn't kept it alive for years. I deleted it without responding. Lindsay stayed silent, probably caught in Brent's orbit. I thought about Nathan's words from Erie. "You're stronger than they know." He was right. In Asheville, I wasn't the shadow I'd been in Erie. I was building something new, clients, connections, a life that felt mine. One evening, Shirley invited me to the bakery after hours. We sat with mugs of tea, cinnamon rolls, scenting the air. "You seem different," she said. I nodded, realizing I hadn't thought about Erie in days. For the first time, I felt unburdened, like I could breathe without carrying their expectations. Asheville was my fresh start, and with Shirley's help, I was finding my place. I wasn't looking back. Months later, Asheville had become my sanctuary. The mountains outside my window no longer felt like a backdrop. They were a reminder of the distance I'd put between who I was and who I no longer needed to be. Each morning, sunlight spilled over the Blue Ridge peaks, illuminating more than my apartment. It lit the path I was carving for my own life. I started hosting small workshops for local business owners, teaching marketing basics, and helping them build social media campaigns. Watching their confidence grow under my guidance felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I'd lost to Erie's chaos. My evenings were mine entirely, painting, reading, or taking long walks along the French Broad River. I even joined a yoga class at a nearby studio, welcomed warmly by instructors and fellow students alike. The letter from Joyce had been the last tether. Once I set it aside, it felt like the final piece of invisible rope snapping free. Every time I thought of them, it no longer carried anger or guilt, just indifference. Their collapse, their bitterness, their failures were theirs to own, not mine to shoulder. Even Brent's online smear campaigns faded, drowned out by the quiet hum of my new life. Asheville's rhythm, steady, natural, and untangled from family drama, had a calming effect I hadn't realized I craved. I felt the difference in small moments, brewing my morning coffee without criticism echoing behind me, answering to no one but myself, walking home from the bakery with a sense of lightness I hadn't known since childhood. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was thriving. I was no longer defined by their expectations or mistakes. Every client I helped, every trail I hiked, every sketch I painted was a testament to my autonomy and resilience. Asheville wasn't just a fresh start. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe, create, and be unapologetically me.